Thursday, we did parallel lines. Today, we're going to focus on writing equations of perpendicular lines. So last Thursday, I kind of went through all this with you as far as like the streets. You know, out here, any lettered street, so out here is L. Your lettered street will run perpendicular to your numbered street. So the corner out here, L and 13th, those two do run perpendicular to each other because when they cross each other, they're at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at. It's a little bit harder to tell on a graph if they create a 90-degree angle because it's kind of like you'd have to rotate it a little bit like that. Then it's a little bit easier to see that those two do create a 90-degree angle with one another. But the important thing is to look over here at these two equations. Kylie, what do you need? Right in the middle of a lesson. Okay, can it wait until I'm done? Okay, I know it's kind of hard to see up here, but if you guys look down at your paper, what's the slope of that top line? What, the bottom one. So the top one is 2, and then this bottom one is -1/2. Okay, so when the two lines were parallel, like we were just working with, their slopes were the same, right? Are those two slopes the same? Obviously not. There are two things that have happened from this slope to get this slope. If this one's positive, this one is negative. Okay, so I want you guys to write these two things down. We will always change the sign. Okay, so if the original slope is positive, we're going to make it negative. And if the original slope is negative, we're going to make it positive. That's the wrong one. So you always want to change the slope. Well, you guys should, because, okay. Oh, you guys are killing me. All of you guys had these notes, and I told you to put them back in your folder. The very top of it. I'm going to run out of copies here. Is that your... No, is that it? Yeah. No, that was... Yeah, so this is it. You just have to go to the... There we go.
I put it in the bag.
Okay.
I wasn't here,
On Thursday? Oh, okay. All right, so back to what I was doing. We're going to change the sign every time. So this is like page 2. It's the back of page 2. We've already done the first 2 pages of notes. All right, so we're going to change the sign, and isn't a whole number of 2 the same as having like 2 over 1? So what have they done with this fraction to turn it into this fraction? They flipped it. Do you guys remember the actual term when you flip a fraction, what it's called? Reciprocal. Good. So I always just say change the sign and flip it. Okay, but flipping your fraction or flipping your number is actually called the reciprocal. I promise you, you guys have all heard that term before. It would have been like 5th grade when you learned how to divide fractions. They would have taught you the term reciprocal. Okay, so today, when they tell us that we're going to find equations of lines that are perpendicular, if I tell you that your slope is 7, then your new slope of the perpendicular line, you'll have to do 2 things with that 7. You'll have to make it negative, and you'll have to flip it upside down to 1/7. Okay? It is going to be extremely important that you guys remember perpendicular lines, the slopes will have different signs, and they will be flipped. Okay? So, we're going to practice that down here at the bottom. It says, what would be the slope of a line perpendicular to the following lines? So let's just letter these A through D. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify the slope that's here. So on letter A, what is the current slope? Okay, so any whole number, you should always put a 1 underneath. So for our perpendicular line, the 7 over 1 would become what? Negative 1 over 7. That's the slope we would have to use, because we would change the sign and we would flip it upside down. Is everybody okay with that? It's 2 steps. Flip it, change the sign. Okay, so for letter B, this slope right here is negative 3 over 1. So we would flip it to 1/3, and since it was negative, now it's going to be positive. Good job. So you didn't have to do this with parallel lines, just perpendicular. I don't know how many times I can say that. I just need you guys to remember parallel lines. If this said find the one parallel, I'd be leaving this the same. I'd leave it as a 7. I'd leave this one as a negative 3. But because it says perpendicular, we have to flip it and change its sign. Okay? This one right here, negative 1/3 would become positive 3. Now, you can write it as 3 over 1. Do you ever need to put 1s on the bottom? No. I would just write it as a whole number. If the bottom number is a 1, I just don't write it. Can you write it as 3 over 1? Yes. It's just easier to type in 3 into the calculator instead of typing in 3 over 1. So that's why I dropped the 1. All right. How about this one? And yep, good. Yeah, I like to always talk about it in 2 steps. So I would have said flip it to 3 over 2 and then change the sign to a negative. As long as you remember to do both things, you guys will get this, no problem. Okay? Go ahead and turn the page. I've got an example up here at the top, and then we've got a couple examples at the bottom that we're going to practice together before I let you finish that practice page from Thursday. Okay, so right here it says, find the equation of a line that is perpendicular to, so let's look at this one first, and then it's going to pass through this ordered pair. So there's your x and there's your y, the 2 and the negative 6. We need to identify the slope. So the original slope looks like it was negative 2. That was the original one. So I'd stick a 1 underneath it. Now what is the slope going to be that we're going to use for perpendicular? 1 over 2. We'd flip it, and it was negative, so I just turned it positive. Now listen, do I need this stuff up here for anything else? No. After I identify the original slope and I flip it and change its sign, we don't need this equation for anything else. We just need the slope here, the x here, and the y here. So again, I don't like the way they work this out sideways, but here's the setup, here's the y, here's my slope, here's my x, and I'm solving for b. So then 1/2 times 2, what's half of 2, you guys? Half of 2 is 1. Now again, if you don't know that, you would type in 1ABC2 times 2. That's all you have to do. So this becomes a 1. And how do we move a 1 to the other side? Subtract it. So that's how they came up with an answer of b equals negative 7. And then just like we've been doing, we would take our m and our b and we'd put them in the equation in slope-intercept form. So y equals 1/2 x minus 7. That's using our new slope and our new intercept. So we are going to, down here at the bottom, we're going to just practice 2 of these because, again, if you guys can do 2, then more than likely you'd be able to do all 4. So we're going to practice a couple of these together, and then I'll give you some time to practice them on your own. Okay, so let's do number 10 and number 13. Those are the 2 we're going to do. And you can just kind of cut that in half. We'll do number 10 on the left side, and we'll do number 13 on the right side. Okay? You guys ready? Okay, make sure you guys are writing this down. We have x and y, and then my current slope is 1/2. What is the slope that we're going to use? -2. Right? We'd flip it to 2 over 1. And it started out positive, so we're making it negative. So then I'm just going to scratch this out because we don't need that anymore. Now we just need to do our plug and chug. What number goes in for y? What number goes in for m? -2. And what goes in for x? 1. Okay, what is -2 times 1? -2. And how would you move that number? You'd add 2. So b equals 2. So now, to write our equation, we have an m of -2 and a b of +2. So using this and this, what would my equation say? -2 what? Yeah, don't forget that x. -2x plus 2. Nice job. I wish I had picked a different one than number 13, because 13 has the same slope, but it is what it is. Not a big deal. Okay, so for 13, here's x, here's y. Current slope is 1/2. So what slope are we using? -2. Flip it, change the sign. Sorry, you guys can't see that. Let me shrink this a little bit so you can see that side. Once we identify that, we don't need this equation anymore. We're just going to do our y equals mx plus b and get to chugging away. What number goes in for y?
5.
M
-2.
and x. Good job. -2 times -5. +10. And then how would we move a +10? B equals -5. Just make sure you guys watch those signs. 5 minus 10 is just like doing 10 minus 5, except it would turn negative because you're taking away more than what you started with. And then equation. Y equals, perfect, -2x minus 5. And flip it over to the back when you're done with that one, when you've got it all written down. Okay, this is the last one we're gonna do, this one, number 4. These up here are good, but this is just an example of every kind we've done. Right now, I just want us focusing on the perpendicular, but you can expect either tomorrow or the next day on your due now to have like one of each type that we've covered so far. One where they give you both slope and intercept, one where you have to find slope and intercept, one that's parallel, one that's perpendicular. Because we have now gone through how to do all of those. But for right now, let's just focus on number 4 since it's the one that says perpendicular. So we have x, we have y. The current slope is 1/3. So when we flip it, it becomes 3, right? And we change the sign to a negative. So we're going to use -3 as our new slope, and then we don't need this equation anymore. Huh? What number goes in for y?
4,
4, m,
-3,
and then x.
1.
There you go. After you plug in those 3 numbers, you multiply the 2 that are side by side. So what are those? -3. And how do we move a -3? Now look, you guys, typically, when I ask you these questions, you're telling me the right steps. You need to then, on your practice page, do the same thing. If you guys are able to tell me what to do while I'm standing up here, you are able to do it on your own, on your paper. Follow these steps. That's why we do so many examples together. Okay? Last thing, let's write this equation. It's always y equals, our slope was -3, so that goes in front of the x. And then our b was 7, so that goes at the end. Okay? So now you have minimum 3 really good examples to look at while you're doing the 4 on your practice page. Now at the beginning of class, I came around and handed back that practice page to those of you who had turned it in. So get that page back out. And then for those of you that I didn't give one back to, you must still have it. So please look in your folder. If you don't have it, I will give you an extra copy.